You're listening to Simply the Best Sports Take, the best podcast breaking down the best stuff in sports with host Sean Bingham. His takes are so good, he dropped the mic, but then you wouldn't be able to hear him, and that would suck.
Welcome into STB Sports Take, Simply the Best Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Bingham. Thank you for being here. Special Friday edition. Why? Because I already told you next week I'm going snowboarding up in Canada, Bald-Faced Lodge. If you've ever heard of it, it is spectacular. It's like the mecca of backcountry snowboarding. I go every year, and I just don't think I'll get a podcast out. But plus, we had some big news yesterday. The James Harden, Ben Simmons trade, blockbuster stuff. So I had to get a podcast out for that and couldn't wait 2 weeks to talk about it. So here we are. We are on YouTube. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts. Everywhere you get your podcasts, we are there. So please subscribe, check us out, share it, all that good stuff. Leave a review. Help us grow this thing. But we're talking James Harden. We're talking Ben Simmons. We're talking NBA. Who won the trade? My initial reaction was that the Nets won the trade in a landslide. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, maybe they didn't win it in a landslide. So there's a lot of ifs here, right? So if Ben Simmons can play like he did last season before pouting his way, out of Philadelphia, then I think that the Nets did win the trade. If Kyrie Irving can play more than just the away games, like if the mandate gets lifted in New York, then the Nets really won the trade. If Andre Drummond can be a contributing member of the Nets, then the Nets won the trade. So there's a lot of ifs that go in the Nets' favor. The one that is not really an if that makes it Philadelphia's, in Philadelphia's favor, is that James Harden is the best player in the trade. And usually the best player in a deal means that whoever gets the best player in a deal wins the trade. So you could argue very reasonably that Philadelphia won the trade. I don't think they did, though. And for the reasons I just stated, but to get deeper into it, here's why. James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, that was never going to work. They played 16 games together. They were 13-3 in those games. So I guess in theory, it did work for the 16 games, but what a massive failure. What a massive failure that was. And there's so many things. I got so many thoughts just swirling around in my mind, but one of them is the NBA's got to fix this. You've got two blockbuster guys, two superstars, really. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of either one of them. I've said on this podcast repeatedly, Ben Simmons is overrated. He's just not my cup of tea, right? I've also been kind of coming around on James Harden, mainly because of his play last season when he was a team player, he was a facilitator, he wasn't whining and complaining and pouting his way off of his second team in 2 years. And so now he's back in my doghouse, if you will. I'm back just not pleased with the guy. So you've got two of your stars in the league, if you're the NBA, that are pouting their way off of their teams. Ben Simmons literally refused to play for the 76ers. Just didn't show up. Just was no, I'm not going to do this. So he forfeits the money. He looks like a complete imbecile. He looks like a total crybaby. All because he got a little bit of criticism about needing to make a layup, instead of passing the ball off when he's got 6'0" Trae Young on him and he's 6'11". I mean, he's scared to death of the foul line. So if he can correct all of those things, right? If he can just play like he has his entire career, if he can go and get 17 points, 8 assists, 8 rebounds, shoot 55% from the field, which is a good thing that Ben Simmons does. He plays within his abilities, right? Most guys that shoot low percentages, like Russell Westbrook, they kind of play outside their ability. Russell Westbrook cannot shoot threes very well at all, but he jacks them up every game. Ben Simmons knows his limitations, and he plays within them. So to me, that's a great thing for the Brooklyn Nets. If they can get Ben Simmons to just be the Ben Simmons that he's been, instead of the pouting crybaby Ben Simmons we've seen the last few months, if they can get him to just do that, they win this trade because it's a better fit for Kevin Durant. It's a better fit for Kyrie Irving. I think there's a decent chance that two things could happen. These are very interesting things here. One, there's a decent chance that the mandate gets lifted in New York, the vaccine mandate, especially as the warmer months approach now for the playoffs. The playoffs are April, May, June. COVID, flu season, all of the sickness seasons, they all kind of start to wind down. It's been in place for a while now. Vaccination rates are up. Things are like starting to kind of shift in a different direction with that, which I'm very excited about. But there's a decent chance you see that mandate lifted, which would mean Kyrie could be a full participating member. And I'll tell you right now that Ben Simmons, Kyrie, and KD, that's a better big three than Harden, Kyrie, and KD, because there's only one ball. There's only one ball. Like, you can't have three mega superstar scorers on the same team and expect it to go very well. It just doesn't really work that way. Somebody has to take a back seat, and I don't think any of them really wanted to do that. And now it's like, no, Ben Simmons, he can get his 16 points a game. He can get 10 assists, facilitate to Kyrie as a 2 guard. Ben will be a 6'11" point guard. Kyrie will become more of a shooting guard, which is really what he is anyway. And then Kevin Durant, of course, does his thing like he always does. So to me, it's much better to have 2 dominant scorers and then 1 really good facilitator who can also score, as opposed to 3 dominant scorers. So to me, it's a much better fit for Brooklyn with Ben Simmons. The big question marks are, 1, will he play? Is he in shape? Is he mentally prepared? Is he physically prepared? Is he going to pout his way out of this, just like James Harden pouted his way out of Houston, pouted his way out of Brooklyn? Or is Ben Simmons going to be mentally tough and physically tough and go do his thing? I think he will. I think he's going to be motivated to prove everybody wrong. He's going to be motivated to get revenge against Philadelphia. I think you're going to see a resurgence of Ben Simmons. That's my honest opinion. He's a far superior defender to James Harden. Far superior defender. And so now it's just an overall better fit. They're without Joe Harris, okay? The Nets are. He's probably not going to come back this season. He's a lights-out three-point shooter. They also brought in Seth Curry as part of the deal. So they gave up James Harden, can't defend, shooting 33% from 3, crybaby powder, hurt frequently, okay? That's who they got rid of. And in return, they got Ben Simmons, big question mark because he's been pouting even more, hasn't played a single game this season, isn't as good of a scorer, but he's more efficient. He's a facilitator, he's a rebounder, and a far superior defender. So they got him, but then they also got Seth Curry, 40% three-point shooter this year, and that's a career low. The guy is a lights-out three-point shooter, can replace Joe Harris or be an addition to him if Joe Harris does come back. And then they also got Andre Drummond, who I think you'll probably see play 20 minutes a game in Brooklyn. He was playing like 18 a game currently for the 76ers. I think you'll see him play quite a bit, just be a big body in the middle, rim protector, rebounder. That's actually a weakness they have because LaMarcus Aldridge is like their best big, and he's more of like a power forward. So they've got like more of a traditional true center in Andre Drummond. They got a lights-out shooter in Seth Curry. They got a perennial all-star and elite first-team all-defensive player in Ben Simmons. A facilitator who doesn't need to take a ton of shots, doesn't want to take a ton of shots, but can still efficiently score 15 to 20 points a game consistently. So if all of that comes together, KD comes back, Kyrie comes, continues what he's doing, I think the Nets are the favorites. To me, the Nets won this trade. They also got 2 first-round draft picks, which, that's something. First-round picks are something in the NBA. Second-round picks are nothing. First-round picks are something. So, to me, the Nets won this trade in a landslide. Right now, in the immediate next few weeks, it might look like the 76ers did, but that's because Ben Simmons hasn't played in months. It's going to take him time. Kyrie, is still dealing with whatever, so we can't have him gelling yet. Not dealing with whatever, but he's still got the away games only thing going on. But here's something I thought about. If you're the Nets, this is the other interesting point I wanted to make earlier when I said there's 2 very interesting things. If you're the Nets and you know that Kyrie can only play away games, I'm sorry, I think I aim for the 5 seed if I'm Brooklyn. I'm not even joking. I would not want home court advantage. If I know that my second best player can only play when we're on the road, I would not want home court advantage. I'd want to make sure that he was there for 4 out of 7 games, not 3. And so, to me, if you're the Brooklyn Nets and you don't think that this mandate is going to be lifted, I would absolutely aim for the 5 seed in the East to make sure that every single round you have more games with Kyrie Irving than you have without him. And then by the time you reach the finals, whoever makes the finals from the West will have a better record, and so you wouldn't have home court advantage there either. And so to me, home court advantage is actually a disadvantage for the Brooklyn Nets because Kyrie can't play, and he's their second best player. So KD comes back healthy. They do some kind of magic work to make sure they don't get home court in the playoffs. To me, the Nets are the favorites. They are. Ben Simmons is going to be in perfect non-injury shape. There'll be 0 injuries he's dealing with. He's been sitting around. Physical shape, I guess we'll find out how his cardiovascular shape is, things like that. It'll probably take him a couple weeks, but the thing is with his game, it's just not as big of a deal because his game isn't predicated on scoring a lot. His game is predicated on passing, facilitating, defending, and things like that can come back quicker than it can to get back to a point where you score 30 points a game, right? So to me, the Nets absolutely won this deal. And I think it could be a very, very interesting play. If you're a Brooklyn Nets fan, you should be rooting for the 5 seed in the East because I think they'd be the favorites. In fact, I want to look up the Vegas odds. I love to look at the sports books and see after I've said what I think. To me, they should be the favorites. Now, you're going to see this is still a good fit for the 76ers because now you got a star player to replace somebody who wasn't actually doing anything for you, who wasn't even playing. So Ben Simmons is an all-star, but he was an all-star that was refusing to play for you. And so you kind of replaced nothing with a superstar in James Harden. So, and they're good, even without him, they've been really good this year. So, to me, like both teams got drastically better only because Ben Simmons wasn't playing at all for Philadelphia. But if it was equally, they were playing for each other, they were playing for their respective teams. If Ben Simmons had been playing, then it would be like they moderately got better with James Harden. But I don't know if it's a fit. Like things are all about the fit. It's not about, and I don't mean the outfit. I mean like fitting together pieces of a puzzle, right? You don't want 3 ball-dominant scorers on one team. It just doesn't work. Look at the Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, LeBron James debacle. It just doesn't work. The pieces don't fit. It's not working. I think the same thing was true of these Brooklyn Nets, and it might be true of James Harden joining Joel Embiid in the 76ers. Joel Embiid is leading the league in scoring. He needs the ball. James Harden loves the ball in his hands at all times. He loves shooting. He loves high usage rate. He's just not a winner, and he's going to prove to continue to not be a winner. Anyway, so I think the Nets won the trade. I think the Nets will be the favorites, and I'm going to look it up right now. So I'm going to Futures, NBA Finals. Okay. Oh, it's how James Harden trade is impacting futures. Here we go. So the favorites to win the NBA Finals right now are the Warriors, and then the Nets. Told you. Then the Suns. Then the Bucks, then the 76ers. The 76ers are third in the East. Third in the East. So Vegas is telling you that I'm right. Vegas is telling you James Harden leaving the Nets and getting Ben Simmons and Seth Curry and Andre Drummond, you're filling multiple spots that you needed filled. We don't have a big man in the middle. We are poor rebounders. Andre Drummond. We're missing Joe Harris, our lights-out three-point shooter. Replace him with Seth Curry. We don't have like a fantastic facilitator and perimeter defender, especially perimeter defender, Ben Simmons. They filled gaps that they needed, drastically needed, to make it all fit together as a cohesive unit, as a puzzle that fits together. The 76ers, on the other hand, they just added a superstar, and they unloaded the guy that was a crybaby. It's a great trade if you're the 76ers, too, only because Ben Simmons forced their hand. Only because Ben Simmons forced their hand. If he didn't force their hand, then it's like, do you really want to give up all these pieces? Because Seth Curry is no slouch. He's going to go get you 12 points a game. And he keeps defenses honest. James Harden's only shooting 33% from three-point land this season. Seth Curry, as a career low, is shooting 40%. He's going to space the floor. He's going to provide more options for KD and Kyrie to score, and Ben Simmons for that matter. I mean, this is a solid squad. The big three in Philadelphia of Joel Embiid, James Harden, and Tobias Harris, that's a solid big three as well. I just don't know if it's going to fit because James Harden just wants that ball so much, and Joel Embiid wants to be in the post. And so is it going to clog the lane for what James Harden wants to do? Is he going to demand the ball more? Is James Harden going to pout his way out of Philadelphia at the end of this season? It's just kind of a disaster in Philadelphia, all because Ben Simmons. So this brings me to my last point that I'll talk on for a few minutes here as well. The NBA has a huge problem. It's gotten to a point where anybody at any time, if you're talented enough, you can just be like, I don't want to play here anymore. You can completely and totally disregard your contract. You can just flip the bird to your team that's been paying you millions of dollars, that took a chance on you, and you can say, forget you guys. I don't care what I signed. I don't care what the contract says. I'm not playing here anymore. And to me, that's like disgustingly pathetic and sad, and the NBA needs to fix it. These contracts need to be enforceable. That's what a contract is. I'm reading a book right now, Winners Never Cheat. It's a fantastic book, but it talks about this exact stuff. Like, you have to honor your contract. It needs to actually mean something. It needs to be binding. That's the whole point of it. But the NBA, these superstars, it's meaningless. It's absolutely meaningless. They can do whatever they want, whenever they want. They can toss the contract aside like it's nothing. And that's what you just watched Ben Simmons do. That's what you just watched James Harden do twice in the last couple of years. Once in Houston, once now in Brooklyn. Apparently he's not getting along with Kyrie or Kevin Durant. It's like, dude, you're impossible. Like, you're impossible. When it looked like he was being the cool guy last year and I was kind of rooting for him, he goes and ruins it this year. So, total bummer. But the NBA, and here's a thought, and I've mentioned this before, but to me, you're on a team, but you're a franchise. You're on a franchise under the overall NBA umbrella. So why not have it be like you work for the NBA and you are assigned you'd still be a free agent, so you'd be assigned, I do this in quotes, to the Brooklyn Nets or assigned to the Philadelphia 76ers, right? And then it's like the NBA can be like, no, you are assigned to this team. You work for us. You work for the NBA, and you are assigned to this team. If you would like to not play for them, then you are welcome to not play for them, and you will not get paid, kind of like Ben Simmons is doing now. If you choose, if our medical, if our doctors and physicians and trainers deem that you are fit to play and you choose not to, then you will be removed from the league. Something like that. Like, just, or we'll say, you'll be on the roster, but we'll free up another roster spot for someone to come in. I don't know. But there needs to be some sort of repercussions where it's like, no, you can't just demand a trade. You can't just demand a trade and get your way. There needs to be some sort of repercussions where it's like, you know what? You're not eligible. If you demand a trade, you're not eligible for the Supermax. You're not eligible for the max contract. Something like that. Because you got to protect these owners. You got to protect the fan bases, the GMs that worked hard to get them, the coaches. There's so much money going into it, and the player takes all the money, and then they're the ones that's also protected. None of it makes any sense. I'm all for free agency, but once you sign a deal, that's a contract, and you need to be bound by it. Because now you're leaving teams out to dry. Ben Simmons' stock was plummeting dramatically. The only reason this trade worked is because both players wanted out. So it's just like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just swap them. But because James Harden's the bigger superstar and Ben Simmons hasn't played at all, and it's more obvious that he doesn't want to play because he's not playing, doesn't want to be on the team rather because he's not playing, they were able to get a lot more. So they got Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, a couple of draft picks. Great deal for the Nets. Again, Vegas is telling you they're the favorites in the East. Then the Bucks, then the 76ers. But the 76ers are behind not only those two Eastern Conference teams, but also the Warriors and the Suns. The Jazz, by the way, are the third team in the West. And then still the Lakers, ironically, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, guys, that's all I have today. I just wanted to come on here and chat about that. To me, the Nets won the deal. There's a lot of ifs. They won the deal if Kyrie can get more games with the team, if Kevin Durant comes back healthy, if Ben Simmons is mentally tough and prepared to play and goes and does his thing. I think the Nets are favorites to win it all. I'd put them ahead of the Warriors even if all of those things happen. And again, if you're a Brooklyn Nets fan and if the mandate doesn't get lifted, I would be rooting for the 5 seed to be the away team throughout the playoffs to make sure that Kyrie can play 4 games every series, not just 3. That's all the time I have for today. Please subscribe. I am out. Peace.
Thanks for hanging with Simply the Best Sports Take. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and check out STB Sports Take.com. Simply the best in sports.